You're listening to Drummer Daily, the daily podcast just for drummers, and it's just for drummers who are serious about creating great music. We don't show off, we don't get flashy, we create great music with others. Hey there, welcome into more Drummer Daily. You know what's really funny is I actually just recorded this episode and then I have like the pre-recorded bumpers that I put in at the beginning of each episode just to kind of introduce things a little bit. And when I imported that in, something happened. The app that I was using to record this crashed, and I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. And I went back and looked, and this episode was gone. So this is the second time I'm recording this episode. But it might have been kind of serendipitous because when I started recording the episode, I was all fired up because of a comment someone made on Instagram disagreeing with me, big surprise, about part 3 of my manifesto, which the podcast will cover tomorrow. Today we're covering part 2. And I didn't do anything, I didn't say anything wrong or bad or whatever, but I was all fired up. And so maybe I was worse. It was worse than I thought. And the Lord looked down upon me and said, we're not going to let you put that one out. So I get to redo it. But today's part of the manifesto is this. And I do want to clear this up because this is actually what I got me fired up originally, is I am making these statements in this manifesto, the first 3 of which are they're not negative, but they're saying if you do this, you're not going to be successful, or don't do this, don't do that. But I want to reassure you that the next half of the manifesto, the other parts of the 7, are more statements, mission statements about who we are as drummers and what we will do as drummers, what we do believe in, not how we will behave as drummers, not what's bad about other drummers. So I want to be clear about that. And the other thing I want to be clear about with this, I said this at the end of the first time I recorded this podcast, but I want to say it at the beginning because it's really important to me to understand this. I am making what everyone else is probably already complaining about, saying blanket statements. I'm saying things that are kind of covering everything, that are a little broad. For example, today's statement, which is drummers that show off don't get hired. That is a blanket statement. But I want to be clear about the purpose of this statement. I am not trying to express a blanket truth that is a law that holds true across the entire universe. I am trying to express a piece of advice for you if your desire is to be a drummer that other people like to play with and will get hired if that's your aspiration. So what I'm trying to say is this. If I make a statement, one of these manifesto statements, I guarantee you that you will find an exception to everything I'm saying. You're going to say, but what about that guy? What about that guy? And yeah, you're right. That guy is the exception and makes what I'm saying not true. But what I'm trying to offer to you is guidance if your goal is to become something different. So if your goal is to become a professional drummer, or even if your goal is to just play at church, but you want to be the guy that everyone else likes being in a band with or likes playing with, that I'm trying to guide you in that way. So if your goal is to do that, I'm going to say, look at the 99% of the people who have succeeded in that regard and do what they do. Don't look at the one person who's the exception and mimic them, because then you have the 1%, you've decreased your odds by 98% or whatever. So why not mimic people who are being successful at what you want to do? And that's kind of my goal for all this, is find someone who is already doing what you want to do, or find a lot of people and look at what the common traits are among all of them, and then do those things. Don't do the things that the one guy who's the exception to the rule is doing and think that you're going to be the second exception to the rule. I don't believe that's wise as a musician. So all that to say, today, drummers that show off don't get hired. Yes, there are exceptions to this rule. I want to be clear too that what do I mean by showing off? Showing off is what I mean is playing playing something that's over the top in relation to the music that you are playing along with. So you are stepping outside the bounds of what is being dictated by the other musicians in the band you're with, or the other instruments on the track that you're playing with, or the style of music you're playing, whatever it is, you're stepping outside of those bounds drastically. So this does not apply, for example, to guys who play metal or R&B or some hip hop, things like that, where the nature of the music actually asks the drummer to play more complicated parts. I'm talking about, because the thing is, if I were to go into play in an R&B band or play for an R&B artist where the bass players, got a really cool syncopated thing going, and the guitar players are playing these awesome lines, keys have something great going on, and then I was the only guy not really adding to that rhythmic texture in the same way, it would actually be a distraction in that case, for me to be underplaying in a poor way. I wouldn't be supporting the other musicians and the other music that's happening. So I just want to be clear that I'm talking about what's appropriate for the music that we're playing. But I just want to be clear that when I posted this to Instagram yesterday, I had someone immediately say, "Oh, but what about this guy?" Because I mentioned that, I said, "What's one common thing you see about guys on YouTube going crazy in their room, showing off on the drums?" The one common thing you see is that they're all in a room alone. And yes, I know that all my drum videos are me alone in a room, but I'm trying to play along with music and not go crazy. Anyway, so yeah, I'm aware of my own perceived hypocrisy there. But the thing is that I actually, have actually played in bands, and I've been, I've played on tons of sessions and played on tours, things like that. And right now I'm not actively trying to become a professional drummer. So the rules are different. And if you have the same set of desires as me, if you've already done it all and you want to do what I'm doing, then by all means do what I do. But again, find a bunch of people who are already doing what you want to do and mimic them. So anyway, I mentioned these guys are on YouTube are all alone in a room, and someone immediately said, "What about that guy? He's got a gig." And I'm like, yeah, there are exceptions. But showing off, I don't believe, is a good way to make friends that are musicians, and isn't a good way to get called back again and again for sessions or for gigs. So I just want to encourage you, if you want to be a drummer that other people love to play with, and when you're a drummer that other people love to play with, whether it's in a volunteer position or it is a paid position, that's really the thing that makes you get the call back over and over again. And if it's a paid position, it's going to be the thing that's going to put money in your pocket. There is always a time and a place to show off, but as a rule of thumb, if you manage to not show off, you will probably get way more gigs than if you do. So that's the short version of this. And hey, you know what? The previous version of the podcast was much longer, and I rambled on and on for a lot longer. So I feel better about this podcast anyway. But I just want to be clear too that the point of these statements is not just to make you agree with me. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, you have two options. You can engage in the conversation and let me know you disagree with me, which I love. I don't get my feelings hurt. If you disagree with me and say, "No, I think you're wrong, this or that," let's have the conversation. That's what we're here for, is to have a real conversation. Or you have the option, if you disagree with me, to just go away, to stop listening to the podcast, to ignore my emails or unsubscribe from my list, or don't read my blogs, whatever. Just kind of disconnect from the world, my community, this community here. And honestly, I really don't enjoy, in general, people who do choose constantly to just disconnect from people they disagree with. So if you have the urge to completely step away from anything, any healthy conversation around things we may not agree with as in regards to the drums, it's probably going to be best for both of us if you step away. But I hope that that's not your inclination. I hope your inclination is to stick around. And if you disagree with this one point, I'm not going to harp on this one point all the time. So you can let me know you disagree with me, and then we can keep going on. No big deal. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. I hope this has been helpful and inspiring to you. And we'll talk again tomorrow for part 3 of the manifesto. All right. Thanks for joining me. Bye.